On today's episode, the first post-race interview with your 2019 Spartan World Champion, Nicole Mericle. Welcome to the OCR Report podcast, brought to you by the OCRReport.com. We are the only podcast to focus exclusively on the elite sport of obstacle course racing, from Spartan to Tough Mudder, to the OCR World Championships, and wherever the elites are racing, we are there. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the OCR Report. Welcome back to the OCR Report podcast. Thank you for listening. My name is Will Hicks. You can email me at willhicks@gmail.com. You can follow the show on Instagram at the OCR Report and on Twitter and Facebook by searching for the OCR Report. Thank you for listening. Today in our show, your 2019 World Champion, Nicole Mericle. This is Nicole's first World Championship. She beat Lindsay Webster and the rest of the field this past weekend in Lake Tahoe. She finished the Beast course in 2 hours, 28 minutes, and 53 seconds. A full 15 minutes, almost 16 minutes ahead of the second place, Lindsay Webster. Congratulations, Nicole. Before we talk with Nicole, if this is your first episode of the OCR Report, welcome. Would you do me a kindness? Would you subscribe to the podcast so you get future episodes directly into your phone and you don't have to even look for them? They'll just pop up. Hey, new episode. You should listen. If you do not subscribe, it'll take you an extra day or two sometimes for them to pop up in your feed or find them available for download. And after you listen to the episode, find us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Tap the purple podcast button on your iPhone or iPad. Search for the OCR Report. Click our logo and then scroll down to click Write a Review. And I will read it on a future episode. I would appreciate it. We've talked about the results already in a previous episode. We are going to talk about the stats and the numbers of the race with Jack Bauer later this week. But today we are going to talk with your women's world champion, Nicole Mericle. This is Nicole's first world championship. Nicole and Lindsay Webster have been going back and forth all year long in the Spartan U.S. Championship Series and the Spartan North American Championship. All year long, it's been Lindsay or Nicole and Lindsay in first and second place. Literally every big race, first and second and first. There was one race where they were first and third, but other than that one, first and second and first, all year long. Nicole and Lindsay are clearly the top two women in Spartan racing right now. Lindsay has won most of their head-to-head matchups this year, but in the race that mattered most, Nicole Mericle stepped on the gas and won by nearly 16 minutes. Nicole's win at the Spartan World Championship this weekend was one of the most dominant World Championship performances we've ever seen, male or female. Her World Championship places her alongside other past World Champions, including Lindsay Webster, Zuzana Kukumova, and Amelia Boone. I am very pleased to welcome Nicole for the first time as a world champion to the OCR Report. It's time to talk with your Spartan world champion, Nicole Mericle. Let's go to the phones. Nicole Mericle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Nicole, congratulations. You are the 2019 Spartan World Champion. How does that feel?
I still think it's like kind of settling in. I mean, it's something that I've worked for a long time, but this course, under the conditions that we had, I think it was kind of like a scary, it was a little scarier for me, I guess. So I'm kind of a little bit still in shock that I was able to win under the circumstances.
You say scary, like when you were at the start line, like looking at the snow and knowing you have a hard course anyway, but you're like actually scared?
I would say that I have never been so nervous for a race before. And also, I mean, normally like I'm looking, part of me is nervous, part of me is looking forward to it, and maybe a little bit of me like kind of wants to like run away. But for this race, I had quite a bit of anxiety in like the last 2 weeks leading up to it, which is like something that I'm just not used to experiencing before races. And I think it was primarily due to the weather, which is kind of, I don't know, I guess kind of not really like the Spartan way, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, that's really common with a lot of people. You know, they get in the start chute and they look around and they see everyone else looks really good, and they think they're the only ones who maybe, man, do I belong here? Like I can still quit, right?
Yeah.
How did you deal with that leading up to the race?
So yeah, I had a lot of worries about the weather in particular. And I think that it actually ended up playing out well for me because I was like in some ways over prepared for it to be cold and wet and snowy. Cause that was like my nightmare. That was like my nightmare conditions. And I just was like, I can either continue like freaking out about this, or I can just make sure that I'm like as prepared as possible. And so I think it just took like my preparation in terms of like the gear that I had and like mentally like what I was ready for to the next level.
How did you prepare gear wise?
So interestingly, I drove the van out from Boulder to Tahoe 2 weeks early, and I flew in, and it was kind of like a busy time for us, and I packed some warm things, but I really didn't pack all of my like really cold weather racing gear. I just packed like a few things. And so I got out to Tahoe, and then we started to see the forecast, and I realized like, oh man, I don't have the gloves that I would really want to have. I don't have the pants that are like kind of more like thermal insulated ones. And I kind of, I had to go on like a last minute online shopping spree. And I had to buy some wool pants, and I bought a couple neoprene, long sleeve layers for my top, which I actually didn't end up using, but I had them just in case. And then, so really what I ended up wearing was I wore wool tights that were windproof in the front, and pretty like kind of fleecy thermal, and so that's what I had on bottom. I had my Darn Tough endurance crew height socks on, and my Solomons that I always race in. That was no different. And then on top, I wore a long sleeve, technical fabric top. I probably would have worn a wool layer on top as well if I thought about it, but I just wore like my race kit top. And then over that, I actually had a rain jacket. And that was something that was like, do I just need a windproof top, or do I go full like waterproof layer? And because of the temperature, I ended up going with the full raincoat.
So you got first place in 2 hours, 28 minutes, and 53 seconds. You were over 15 minutes faster than second place. Is that how you planned it out? Or were you planning to just guns blazing like that?
That I was very surprised when I got to the finish line. I didn't really know during the race how big my lead was. And so even though I kind of had like a small sense that like I couldn't see anybody, I thought that I had a decent lead, I didn't know it was that big. And so I was still running a little bit scared and still definitely pushing. But yeah, I had actually focused a lot on wanting to go out conservatively. On the first climb, I was prepared to not be in first. I was prepared to like have maybe even like several people ahead of me, and I just wanted to feel really comfortable. And what ended up happening is I took it out in first, and I just felt really good. And I felt comfortable, and I ended up being in the lead anyways. So, which is something that I'm kind of used to leading in a lot of races, but this one, it's an altitude, it's the first climb is like really steep. And I think my best race prior to this year was actually last year, even though I went into it thick. It forced me to go out easy and I actually had a pretty decent race. So I wanted to in some ways replicate that race, but just make the whole thing faster.
Can I ask you about the way you start races? It seems like you're always out in front, like at the starting gun. Tell me about your thought process there. Why do you want to be first out of the gate usually?
I think it's just something that I'm used to doing from track and cross country, and it's not even it's hard for me to go out slower. It's because I'm used, especially in like the 1500 in track, you have to get off that start line fast and get a good position. And if you don't, then like it can be bad for like the rest of the race. So I think I'm just really used to being like really fast off the line. And I think, and a lot of the times I am just like very quick the first 50 meters and then I settle in and I don't like keep pushing, but people still see me, being the first one off the line. So yeah, it's just kind of habit.
Do you prefer to be in front or do you prefer to, see somebody in front of you that you're chasing?
I prefer to be chasing. Yeah. And that's where I'm comfortable, in obstacle races. Well, actually so that's where I've been comfortable in other races. Like my whole life, I guess besides maybe high school, but all throughout college, I was always the runner that would sit and kick. And so that was like a really comfortable place for me to be, was as long as I could see the runners ahead of me, then I felt comfortable that I could like outkick them in the end. So I was never the one to be pushing the pace, but in obstacle racing, especially when it comes to Spartan races, when you have the spear, which in my mind is, you can train for it, you can put the time in, and sometimes it still just doesn't go the way you want it to. So we call it like having a burpee buffer. So it's kind of not enough to like sit behind the leaders. If you like really want to win a race, you have to push and you have to almost give yourself like a 2-minute buffer in case you fail the spear or in case you feel something else.
You led wire to wire. You talk about that burpee buffer. You had about 8 burpee buffers. What's your mindset when you don't know how far behind you the rest of the pack is?
I guess it's really easy to push yourself when you have somebody right in front of you, right with you, right behind you. Like that, it provides like that mental stimulus to run hard. But when you're by yourself, it is definitely harder, and it's harder to practice to like do workouts on your own. It's harder to race on your own. And it was something that I think it allowed me to stay in a zone where I didn't overreach. So like a lot of people were noting about like when I came across the line, I looked really comfortable, and which was a little different than my race a few weeks ago at West Virginia, where my calves cramped the last mile and I was like kind of struggling to get to the finish. So I think that I didn't quite get to like that like last bit of effort just because, I kind of had I didn't have somebody like just making me hammer like on that last climb. But it, the race was really strange. There was injuries that happened. There was DNF. There was crazy weather that led people to, even if they didn't get hypothermia, it was like pretty close. So the way that like the field stretched out was like so abnormal. I mean, I'm not trying to say that I didn't like run like a solid race, and I'm definitely proud of my time. If you compare it to like the men's field, I was 14th overall, which I'm pretty excited about. But at the same time, it's very unusual for me to win by that much. Like, and I think that's just a kind of a testament to how rough the conditions were, and how for the women, like, and the men, but once people started doing burpees, that didn't just like slow them down, but it got them cold because they were doing burpees typically in snow puddles. And that was like really hard to recover from. And it kind of led to this like sequence of more obstacle failures.
How did you do with the cold? You mentioned all that gear you had, all the equipment. Mm-hmm. How'd your body hold up with the temperature?
I think I held up really well. At some points I was a little too warm and I had to take my jacket off. And at some points, really just after the swim, my hands were like totally frozen. And I struggled a little bit to get my layers back on, but that was expected. And I knew that there wasn't anything immediately after the swim that I was going to have my grip and my dexterity for. And so, I was like comfortable with that. Had there been something like even monkey bars after the swim, I'm sure that I would have fallen off. So I'm glad that Spartan, kind of took that into consideration, that people going through the swim are going to be pretty taxed.
How did you do
pretty cold?
How did you do on the swim? How did the water go?
It was fine. Yeah. I mean, it's something that I've not that I haven't done well at it in past years, but it's definitely gotten in my head a little bit. Just getting out of the swim and being so cold. I was ready for it. I knew that it was going to be kind of a struggle to get everything back on, and I wasn't going to feel my hands for a little bit, but that I would warm up, if I prepared the right layers. And the swim itself, it was so short. I think it was maybe, I don't know, like 20, 30 meters. It was super short. It was just enough to get us wet and uncomfortable. So yeah, the swim itself, I think I was the second fastest on. I wasn't trying to go like super fast. I was just like trying to get out of it, and not be, it wasn't like trying to set any PRs in swimming.
You mentioned your time on the swim. You're the second fastest. You mentioned your standing compared to the men. Do you keep track of the stats and the data? Is that something you look at when you're training?
Yeah, especially with races like this that like a lot of things went crazy, I think, especially on the women's side. And so I finished, I had a huge lead. That's exciting, but it's also kind of hard to gauge, what that effort level was, especially because I ran by myself for most of the race. And so, it's just a different kind of racing. Like, I would say that my effort in West Virginia was in some ways it was way harder, but in other ways it wasn't. So to me, I was just kind of like, well, how did I actually do? And so it is nice to be able to compare my time to the guys, because that's also one way I always gauge myself. And that was like in West Virginia, it was really exciting that me and Lindsay's time were both in like the top 10, I think, maybe something like that. But
do you have a goal?
Yeah, so I look at that. I look at some other stats, but Jack Bauer will always like break down everybody's splits. And that's kind of cool to see, especially with Tahoe, because you can see people that just like, they go out way too hard on the first climb. And so they're only 2% or 9% behind the leader. And then they end up like 20% behind at the end, or even more. And so it's kind of cool to see the stats, and you can learn a lot from that.
Do you have a goal when you're starting? Like, I want to be in the top 10 of the men, or I want to be in the top 5. Is that, or is it just kind of afterward you see like, okay, that's where I landed?
No, I don't. I think the only time I thought about it is when I am in front and I have a big lead, and this is like in the U.S. National Series races, but also in some of like the smaller, like local races. Sometimes if I'm by myself in the front, that's actually what my mind will go to. It'll be like, how many guys can I beat now? So you gotta like sometimes think of different things to motivate you.
How did you do on the obstacles this race?
They were great. I was really nervous that even if I had the right layers, that if the obstacles were the metal ones, especially, it just like takes so much heat away from your hand. And I've had races before where, I've done races in 10-degree weather, but none of the obstacles were metal. You were touching rope, you were touching wood, things that aren't going to like suck that heat away from you. And I did those obstacles barehanded and it was fine. But I've also been in Spartan races where it's not even as cold, but I get halfway through an obstacle and like that metal just completely wrecks my hands. So that was one thing I was super concerned about. I had one pair of gloves that I was going to be able to do obstacles in. And then I had my bleg mitts, which you can like pull back and then do obstacles barehanded. So I felt like I was ready if I needed to wear gloves on obstacles. And I ended up not. I just had my bleg mitts on the whole time. And nothing really gave me that much trouble. There was one funny incident where I went to do monkey in the middle, and I got through the first two sections of Twister and the section of monkey bar totally fine. And then I did start feeling a little bit cold, and I get to the last section of Twister, and I decide to try to like blow into my hand to warm it up a little bit. And so I go to blow into it, and in the process, I just end up getting snot all over my hand, because like when it's cold out, when you're racing, you just like kind of have this constant stream of like snot, which is pretty gross. But so I ended up just kind of like getting it all gross, and then I went to the next rung, and then I have this like snotty hand that's like slippery. So that was like an unfortunate instance where it ended up being fine, but it actually did make the last section of Twister a little bit harder.
It's fine for you, but I feel bad for the guy right behind you. That
I know. I was thinking about that. I was like, oh no, hopefully that doesn't hurt anybody's race.
Usually it's mud people leave on the monkey bars behind them, but
yeah,
whatever. This was your first win at the Spartan World Championship. Tell me what you felt as you crossed the finish line.
You know, I wasn't like kind of, I think, ready for it. I wasn't quite, that's not the right word. When I was racing, I wasn't allowing myself to like fully think that I would win, because I think, especially from my running background, I've just been told by so many coaches, and it's been drilled into me to always run through the line. Like you don't celebrate before. Like if you don't know that you have that win, like you run through the line. So I, really like I kind of let it sink in at the last sandbag carry, which was close to the end. I could see that nobody was in sight. I knew what was ahead of me, and I was really confident that I would be able to do the last two hard obstacles, beater and Hercules. But again, like you just never know. And so it really wasn't until after the last obstacle, the Hercules, that I was finally like, oh my gosh, like, yes, this is actually going to happen. So it kind of took me a little bit longer, I think, than people would have expected to really like accept that I had the win. But it was great. It was really exciting in the last like few moments of that race. And afterwards it was just kind of like it was still shocking, even though it's something that I've worked for forever. And I had it in my mind as a goal. Sometimes when it happens, it's still kind of a shock.
Your boyfriend, Aaron Newell, had a good race. He finished in 4th place on the men's side. With the 2 of your Tahoe winnings, do you have any plans for van life upgrades? So Aaron did. He had a great race. He liked everybody to know that he was in 2nd place.
for a long time. So yes, he ended up fourth, but he was in second.
Did he tell you to tell us that? Like, make sure you mention that on the.
No, but that's just what he says, and so I have to repeat it. That's what he tells everybody. No, he was really excited. I was super excited during my race. He came back and cheered me on the last mile, and so once I saw him, I was like, "How did you do?" And because the whole time that I was racing, I kept on hearing little tiny tidbits of the men's race, and I heard that he was in third at one point, and then I heard that he was in second, which I think that kind of is really exciting too, and it kind of gives you a little boost of energy when you hear your friend or your partner doing really well. So we had a good weekend, and we actually would love to sell this van and then maybe make another one and make it better. But I think that's going to have to wait until we're back from Europe, because we have several races that we're doing in Europe, and we're going to be traveling for almost 3 months.
That might have been something you were thinking about on your run. Like, you're picking off guys, left and right as you're going. Like, hey, am I going to catch up with Aaron? Where's he at?
Yeah, there has been one race that I did beat him, but he rolled his ankle in that race, and he kind of gave up a little bit, and so I don't hold that against him.
You're very kind to make reasons for him, but he knows what happened.
Yeah.
You mentioned the races in Europe. Is one of those races you're going to do the Spartan Trifecta Championship?
Yep. I'm going to be in Greece again. I went there last year, and it was one of the most fun race weekends I've ever experienced. It was super unique to be in Sparta, and the town there just really was so excited to have us there. They were super encouraging. And then the race itself, I'd never done a race in Europe before, and they are a little different. They've got some different obstacles. They have a lot of balance obstacles, which, as bad as I was at them, it's still it adds, just a little different element to racing, something to work on. And the whole experience is great. So I'll be back there. And then I'm also going to Sweden, but I don't plan to race, at least not right now. I'll just be there crewing for Aaron and for Rhea.
So this is the second year Spartan has had their $1 Million Challenge. The 3 races in the challenge are Tahoe, which you just won, the Trifecta Championship in Greece that you got second at last year.
Mm-hmm.
If you win or do well in that Trifecta Championship in Greece, would you think about competing in the third race, the 24-hour Ultra in Sweden?
So I have never had any interest in doing an ultra. I love going out to them and cheering people on and cheering for people, but I kind of still have that mindset of being a 1,500 meter, 3,000 meter steeplechase runner. So 13 miles was a long way for me. And I'm not saying that I couldn't do it. I'm sure that I could do it, but it just doesn't get me fired up. I get excited about the short races, like the 3Ks and the things like the Red Bull all in knockout rounds that are only a mile, the course is only a mile long, and you race 3 times in one day. Those things are what really gets me excited. Running for 24 hours in cold weather up a mountain, that sounds pretty brutal to me. and I'm also not the most durable person. I run about 35 to 50 miles a week, which isn't a lot for someone who is a runner first and foremost. So to do an ultra makes me a little bit nervous for injury risk, and to do a 24-hour race, that's kind of unfathomable for me. But and actually the main thing is that I haven't qualified for the Sweden race. So even if I was, able to get behind that challenge and be convinced to do it, I would actually have to fly from Europe. I would have to go to either Dallas or to Malaysia. I think Malaysia. And do an ultra in order to qualify.
You are on the John Albon race plan there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some people might say, you know what, the ultra is not exciting, but you know what's exciting is $1 million.
I know. Yeah. I will say that in the last year or so, as I've kind of built up some more durability, I haven't been injured, big time injured in a while. I've been working on a lot of things and I've been kind of playing with the idea of I could see myself maybe doing an ultra. But I definitely wasn't planning on doing one this year. So we'll have to see.
Nicole, do you have any sponsors or anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, definitely. Darn Tough. They make an incredible sock, super durable, merino wool, which is stays a little bit warmer when it's wet, and they have a lifetime guarantee. And then Spartan Race has been helping me out considerably this year. And Alt Red is a beet supplement that is in a small, tiny pill. So it's really easy to take, doesn't upset your stomach, and it gives you a little extra boost on workouts and races. So, yeah.
Nicole, how can people follow you on social media?
So I'm primarily on Instagram, and my handle there is Nicole, Nickel DM, which Aaron likes to make fun of me that it's a hint about DMing me on Instagram.
Sure.
But it's actually my last two initials.
It's not about sliding. It's about surnames.
No, it's not about, yeah. Maybe one day I'll change it.
Nicole, do you have any last thoughts on the Spartan World Championships or anything else?
No, I'm just still kind of recovering and celebrating, and excited to actually go do a lot more racing. This is not the end of the year.
Your 2019 Spartan World Champion, Nicole Mericle. Nicole, thanks much.
Thank you.
Special thanks to Nicole Mericle for appearing in this episode. Well done, Nicole. Come back anytime. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Stitcher, it's fine. Shout out to the OCR Discord. Some of the smartest and snarkiest OCR fans on the internet hang out over there. Well done, you guys. Go to theocrreport.com to find more OCR Report podcasts, including Obstacle Running Adventures, Overcome and Run, and World's Toughest Podcast. I will talk with you soon. Go spend time with someone you love.